Well, g'day, Max there again, back in the new shop, and we're going to continue trying to even out some of the high spots on our Bridgeport column here. Now, as we mentioned in the previous video on this machine, we're not doing a full 100% scrape on everything to get everything back near a new condition. We still have to make up the tooling to enable us to do that. So I need this machine up and running, and so we're just doing we're just getting the worst of it sort of leveled out the best we can at the moment with the limited scraping and measuring tooling that we have. So last episode we took off two of the large high spots. So what we're up to now, we're going to roll the casting back around and we'll do some more detailed measurements. Now, I did make up a bit of tooling to assist in this, so I'll show you that when we roll the casting over. I had a package come in the mail the other day from over the other side of the country, Matty over at Matty's workshop, and he sent us over one of his caps. Matty's workshop cap, so cheers Matty, fits great. So anyway, let's get our casting rolled back over and we'll see where we're at. So in the previous video we did some rough scraping down as far as here, and then another spot further down. So we'll get our casting rolled over now, and we'll get in and have a look and do some more detailed measurements. So starting with our good side, or reasonable side compared to the other side, I want to get a bit of an idea on the relationship of our flatway here and see how it sits in relation to this area and this area. So these in the factory, you've got to presume, which is never a good thing to do, that they're all machined in the same setup. So therefore then when you've got issues here, you can reference off here to bring things back into line again. That's my way of thinking anyway. So going off our good side, I just want to see how this is sitting, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So we've zeroed our indicator out up this end. And just carefully starting to drop off a little bit here, so pretty good up to here. Got minus half a thou. Minus half a thou. Now Bridgeport for some reason cut a relief in the casting here, so I'll have to get this from a different angle. So yeah, no idea why they do that. So sitting down this very end down here, we're right down to 2.5 thou So yeah, we've got a lot of wear just here. That drops off 2.5 thou, half a thou there, and we're all good up the top section there, all on 0. So okay, we'll swap over to the other side and we'll do the same thing there and just see how the measurements match up or not match up. Right, after those measurements, we've discovered there is wear in our good side. We've got half a thou wear down in the lower 3/4, and it drops right off. There's 2.5 thou wear in this bottom section. The top is still good. So the other side tells a different story. We're still starting off at 0 up the top, but we're slowly dropping off. We've got a 0, half a thou, 0, half a thou, half a thou, 1 thou, -2, -3, -2, -4, 3 to 4 thou in this area, -1, -3, same, and drops off to -3 to -3.5 thou down here. So that puts a different light now on how I've got to measure these dovetails. What I think I really need to split the difference between the way that this face is lying in comparison to the other face. So when we put our dowel pins in here to measure, I'm going to actually put the dowel pins on different size gauge blocks to elevate the dowel pins in this worn area and just step the gauge blocks down in size to where got a increase in size from 3.5 thou back to our starting point. I think that way is the only way I'm going to average this out. Really, the whole lot needs doing properly, but I'm not in the position to do that at the moment. As I said before, I need this thing up and running, and we do not have a good prism straight edge camelback style to start the process. So let's get some gauge blocks set up and we'll get our pins set up and re-measure our dovetail width. So what I want to check now is to see how much or what effect this wear here is giving us on our width measurement across our dovetail when measured on the pins. So 2 gauge blocks I have here. I have 147 thou and 150 thou. So the 3 thou difference represents the approximate wear from top to bottom on the column. We'll just set the pin in there and take a measurement across. Zero, our indicator. Okay, we're zeroed out there. So I'll swap the gauge block over to the 150. We're getting just under 3 thou. Yeah, a hair under 3 thou. So what that tells us as this plane drops off, and we're measuring down the other end our dovetail width across, we're losing 3 thou. So it's pretty, the fall is pretty relative to the distance we're losing when we measure across. So we just have to excuse me, we just have to take that into consideration with these measurements. Now, when I said before, should I be averaging the measurements here out in relation to the fall on here? Well, I was thinking about this last night, and I came up with the idea no, because I'll show you from above. When we look at the rear of the knee, this is a relief section there and there. So the contact on our knee is between here and down here. So the problem area was when the knee was at full elevation. So if we head back over to the column, so if we look at these shaded areas, these 4 spots here, here, and here, that represents where the knee sits when it's at maximum travel. So if we duplicate that with this piece of timber, the table works between max travel and I'd probably generally use, you know, you're down the lower end here. So now, when we come up to max travel, where our issue starts, and our issue starts in this region here. So if we look at what's going on in this area here, there's not much happening. You know, we're only dropping off 1/2 thou wear here. It's not something that's going to give us an issue. This area underneath is what we rough scraped in the previous video, as with underneath here. So if we compare our worn side, come around the other side, that's going to look really weird on TV, that. Where our travel is at full height, we don't have anything out of the ordinary going on here. There's no wear. It doesn't drop off till down here. Okay, but coming up from down to up, if we look at where our knee rides, it's coming up, it's coming up. It's in mid position there. So we have our gibs, well, I have them normally adjusted, so I don't have any play in its mid position. So we're coming from an area from 2.5 thou wear to 1/2 thou wear, and then when we get up to the upper end of the travel, this is where we're getting into our unworn section here. The lower journal on the knee hits the unworn section. The upper journal is still traveling in the unworn section. So that's giving us the effect, the top part of the lower journal starts to tighten up here. So if we swap over to the other side, we see a greater effect in that problem. There's not really an issue up here because we're only looking at 1/2 thou wear towards, or it drops off to 1 thou there. The top bit inside is still pretty good, we're still on zeros there, but when we come down to the lower journal, we're in the 3 to 4, well 2 to 4 thou range of wear. So as our knee comes up to maximum travel, we're getting into the half a thou to 1 thou wear. So the top of this journal travels from the 3 to 4 thou area of wear up to the 1 thou wear, or half a thou. So I think this is where our main issue is now with the binding. So yeah, we've scraped under here, and we scraped a bit away at the top in the previous video to level out this width between here and here. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to re-measure the width of our dovetail all the way down and see if this ties in to what we've just discovered here, where our tight spot is the lower journal on this side of the knee as it comes up. So I'll get some measurements across. We'll set you up at a different angle. Now, this is the tool that I made. So it's just a simple bracket with a rod. It's relieved in the center. Actually stole it off one of my dial indicator bases. Same with the top. And yeah, that's what I'm using. So this rocks the lower registers in the V-way, and we just rock over our dowel pin. So let's get set up and we'll do our measurements across, and that'll give us our final determination of where we've got to scrape any more off, or we can just go ahead and just do a light finish pass down the whole length. Right, we'll take our measurements with our parallel and our gauge pin. So we're zeroed out here on our indicator. We'll just keep, whoops. One thing you got to be very careful of is you don't bump anything like I just did there. Okay, we're still on 0. We'll slowly work our way down. Still on 0. Or bump the camera. And we're minus half a thou there. So I will work my way down the length and bring you back when I've completed it, and we'll look at our numbers. Okay, so we've done our step measuring across, and what we're looking at now is we're on a 0, drop off half a thou. There's a thou dip there, coming back up 6/10, half a thou, dip, minus a thou, a couple of tenths, minus a thou, half a thou, well, yeah, it's a minus half a thou, back up to 0. So what we've got at the moment then, the top part, remember we did our initial rough scraping under here, we're now come up to the same result as our measurement down the bottom. Now, initially, before we did anything, we had 1.5 thou variation across the width from top to bottom. Now, bear in mind, the measurements that we've just taken across here, remember just a little while back we did a measurement on the dowels on 2 different size gauge blocks to accommodate for the wear down here. Now that was just to see how much further the gauge block would go in. Now, if I had have done this across measurement on a lower gauge block down here, these readings here would all be greatly reduced by 2 or 3 thou. So when you look at it that way, keeping it the angle of the dovetail relative to the plane here, it puts it on, if I can exaggerate with a piece of timber, it puts it on an angle like that. So that puts that at a compound angle. Now that we have top and bottom closer together, I'm just going to draw a line in the sand here, and I'm going to do a finish pass all the way down underneath, and then a very light finish pass scraping on the underside of the dovetail, and we'll clean up the knee. We'll blue this up, we'll clean up the knee, we'll scrape the gib just level as we can, and we'll just see what sort of a reading we're getting off the blue, because you can get quite tangled up in these measurements, being as it's looking like it's a slight oblique plane, where these two planes should be parallel. So hopefully that didn't confuse you, but once you start get two planes out of whack, you're in a compound situation, and it will throw your measurements right out. As we discovered in an earlier video when we were mucking around with our compound slide on our lathe. So I'll roll the casting over, we'll get the underside blued up, we'll do a finish pass, and then I'll get the knee cleaned up, and we'll do a test fit and just see what the blue contact is telling us, and we'll go from there. Okay, second light pass, and we're going to be coming in from the other direction. So there's very little material coming off there, so we'll continue all the way along till we get to the other end. So my scraper is held at a very low angle compared to, like, what works for me best is if it is elevated a little bit. I've got to hold it on a low angle so I can get right in to the corners here of the dovetail. So anyway, let's continue on. So I did get a proper stone. It's a little teardrop, well, a tapered stone that will fit into the dovetail. So that'll take off the burrs. Now this is ideally now a prism straight edge or camelback with a beveled edge on it would be ideal, but as I've mentioned, we don't have one, but I do have this. These are a pair of Starrett straight edges, which I've blued one of them up. And the reason I've clamped two of them together is just to give it a bit more stiffness. So if we're warping, I can push this with my fingers and flex it if there's one. Hopefully two will take some of that out, and yeah, we'll just see what happens. See if we can get a reading off that. It's not ideal, I know, but right, let's bring you down and we'll have a bit of a bo peep of what I can see here. Okay, it's a bit hard for the camera to pick this up, but we're looking quite good there. We sort of hollow out where earlier on where we did that rough scraping. So we've got contact down to here. Bit thin on it, very thin on it here. We're starting to pick up again as we go down. Quite heavy on the end there. Now, this blue that I'm using, not overly impressed with it, as it's very oily and very smeary. I'm not sure either about the reading that we're getting using those straight edges in that way. So I've got another option. So let's re-blue it with Plan B. Because yeah, I'm a bit concerned about this hollow that we're getting right here. According to me measurements, it shouldn't be there. So let's re-blue this with the Plan B tool. So this is the bearing blue that I've been using. It's been fine before for other applications where I've used it, but in this application it just seems like really thick and oily. So I did try and track down other brands, but it's looking like they've got to come in from eastern states or overseas. And I did try a cheap roller. Okay, well, this thing here is not worth 2 knobs of goat shit, as the actual roller itself isn't flat, and it's made out of a very hard compound, so it needs to be a bit softer. So that's a waste of time and that's a semi waste of time. Okay, let's go to our Plan B. Okay, so Plan B, I have my vernier height gauge stripped down. We'll see if we can get a reading off this. It doesn't sit entirely into the face of the dovetail, but it goes at least a fair way down. Okay. So yeah, it was only a very faint light coating of blue on it. I'm actually very happier with that reading what I can see here. Let's come down and have a look. So we're getting a far better result down here now. So that's a lot more even, and just contact on the end there. And even streaks running down here. So unfortunately the vernier height gauge isn't long enough to reach down the end. So I think what I'm going to do now is, where it has contacted, I'm going to scrape the blue off and we'll take another print. Now the camera won't probably pick this up. You might just see a few spots of it, but like just there, a couple of these dark spots that you see here. There's more down there, along there, and along there. If you've ever seen cavitation inside a hydraulic pump, what that does, the erosion, that's exactly what this looks like here. So I'm wondering if they were bad bits in the casting and they've broken out and got caught in the slideways, and that's what's caused some of these issues, especially down here. Further up the top, it's not evident. There's no sign of it in that top section. So yeah, just sort of bears a thought whether the pieces have broken out and got into the slideways, and that's caused a lot of this scoring. It's, you know, something. So okay, let's take another print of this. Okay, so we're seeing a definite improvement up here. Down here as well. Still a bit light through there. So I'll keep going on here, and I'll give it a few more scrapes and bring you back for the final result. Okay, this is as far as I'm going to go with this now. It's very hard with this camera to pick what I'm looking at. It's light on it down the bottom, but I'm not too concerned about chasing too much down that end there. So Alright, you can see a lot of blue up here, but what I'm actually looking at is the very thin, let's see it here, is the very, the very light, the lightest blue sections in between the body of blue. And those are all of our high points, and there's lots of them in this first half. It's come up not too bad. So I think we're going to call it here, and what we'll do next video, we'll look at our knee and see what we've got to do there. Okay, well, we'll bring this one to a close here. That was quite the mission. We've ended up, I'm very happy with the result. Unfortunately, I couldn't, the GoPro camera, I can't get some, doesn't want to focus on good close-up shots, but I'm very happy with the scraping in the top half. I wasn't too concerned about the lower half, as that has the most wear in it. Our main concern was the top half. So yeah, we had it was a bit of a mission till we found something we could print with. As I said, yeah, you really do need prism straight edge or a camelback with a bevel on it to do this sort of thing, which over here in Australia, trust me, they are like rock and roll shit to get hold of. You won't. There may be a couple floating around, well, there is a few floating around eastern states, but over here in Western Australia, I've never ever seen one come up for sale. So I don't think I've ever seen one come up for sale in Australia. I think people that have got them are hanging on to them. So that's one of the reasons why the big tool support off the horizontal boring machine that I've got, I will be going to use that as a reference straight edge when we go to tackle the bigger machines. But yeah, this was a pure juggle. There was a line in the sand that had to be drawn due to the varying measurements, so we weren't chasing our tail and end up with a result worse than what we started with. So we're in a better position than what we started with, so that's a good outcome. So yeah, next we'll clean up the knee. We'll give the knee a very light clean up scrape, and then we'll re-blue the knee onto the column. We'll fit it up, scrape the gib, and see how we're looking there. So anyway, cheers, thanks for watching. I hope you didn't get too confused on some of the measurements. This is scraping how I have to do it at the moment, as I'm not fully set up for it and won't be for some time. But we've got to make do. The old vernier height gauge has been our lifesaver here. And I do have to send this in for calibration, as I want to get it checked for squareness so we can see how the knee is sitting in relation to the column. So anyway, cheers, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.